David. David. David.
That's good to know. That's good to know. My fiance actually had knee surgery a few months ago, so he actually is gonna drop off and let him hobble in. But the ballet was there. No, I invest in your restaurant. I even took my 17-year-old son there to show him kind of perfect place to take like a date with me. Some of his friends have taken their home to Chick-fil-A. And I thought, yes, yes, I mean, obviously the market was a lot of interest rates, but it's, I live in it. It's like 45 minutes. I don't like it. No, but I need to get my never mind increase. I'm always okay too. I can't wait to see that.
Okay. D5 is for hugging. Oh, you're a coach? No.
Problem guy? That guy's a problem? Rich, you got one road you sit on right there. When you get opposed, you oppose him as the senator for killing, right? We don't want to.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, good job. I was messing with when you're done.
Test. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the joint city-county meeting. It's at 9 a.m., so if we can, I'd like to get started and welcome everyone here today. So we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. The Pensacola Escambia Board of County Commissioners and Pensacola City Council joint meeting to discuss the Bay Center. Jared, you want to do the pledge of allegiance?
Sure. All right, please stand, or we invite you to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here to tell me if the meeting was properly ordered.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, the meeting was advertised in the Pensacola News Journal on July 3rd at 4 p.m.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Turn this thing back on. There we go. Well, welcome everyone. It looks like we have a good crowd here to discuss what hopefully will be a futuristic, great opportunity for the county and the city as we look at ways forward on what to do with this building. This building's, gosh, fairly old, served the community very well for a long time. But I think everyone in our group, and I think in the city, probably thinks it's time to do an extreme makeover, including myself. So I would like to, basically, we met a couple months ago back at the Board of County Commissioners, and the city came over and the mayor briefed. And we were committed to doing something with the Bay Center. And so a joint meeting was asked, and Lumen Commissioner May reached out, and we decided to do that. So this is the first step in the way ahead today. And as we get in the briefs, I know we got, Michael Capps is gonna talk a little bit about what ASM has. And just for disclosure, Councilwoman Pat and I had talked to OVG. I don't know if you want to brief that later. And then obviously, Mayor, you're going to talk about the SMG or whoever you designate. But I'll go ahead and let the mayor say, do you have any comments, Mayor Reeves?
I'll be brief. Just certainly want to thank city and county staff. We know how difficult it is to get everybody in the same room. 13 different people to find one day and one morning. It takes a lot of effort, so thank you for putting this together. But I'll echo what Board Chair Kohler said, which is this is not just a city, or because the county is a building or because it's in the city, doesn't make it just a city or county issue. We certainly know that what happens here and what happens around here is a regional issue, and it really would put us in a position as a community to be successful. So I appreciate everybody, appreciate staff allowing, getting this meeting to happen. And I agree, I think this is the first step in a much needed and much overdue process. So thank you.
And just as we get started, I want to have an open forum from anyone on city council or the Board of County Commissioners if they have any comments. Does anyone want to say anything as we move forward?
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you. Mayor Reeves and I obviously have a great working relationship, and Councilman Patton as well, and requesting this meeting, and for you to put it on the agenda. You're the chairman, you're the leader, and so I certainly appreciate you convening this meeting. And just very quickly, and because it probably indirectly or directly affects most of us who serve, particularly those of us who serve in the city, Pastor John Powell, Truth with Youth, who's an icon in this city and an icon in the Belmont Villers, is in need of our prayers, and the unfortunate, tragic events that occurred on yesterday. I want to thank you for showing. I want to thank Councilman Patton for being there and Councilman Broad for being there last night with the Powell family. I think it was important and significant for the community of the city and the county to be there and to show unity and prayers for Pastor Powell. So thank you, and again, thank you, Councilman Patton and Councilman Broad for being there.
Yeah, my hand partner was Councilwoman Patton. Prayers.
Well, you needed the prayers. I've been reading your emails. You need a little prayer.
All right. Anyone else have any comments? Councilwoman Patton?
And yes, we were in unity, sharing prayers last night, which was always a good way to start. I just want to say thank you as well. I think this is hopefully going to be very productive. I really, really want collaboration between the city and county. You guys all, I've talked to all of you, not just on this issue, but really every issue. But I really appreciate your leadership in putting this meeting together, and I look forward to what's going to happen today. So
Good, thank you. Any other further remarks before we go into the briefs and then start drilling down on some of the topics? So at this point, if I wouldn't mind, Michael Capps, and I want to just kind of explain, the county's had two different briefs from ASM. We're not, they're the current leaseholder of this and running it. And they worked, and I know some of the outside bodies like TDP and DIB were here about a month ago. And I'd like him to kind of share where they are in their study and where we're, some of the things that they're looking at as options, and we can have more discussion. So Mike, do you mind just share a few comments on where we've been, and so everyone knows kind of the background?
Absolutely, certainly. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Michael Capps, General Manager here at the Pensacola Bay Center with ASM Global. We are currently undergoing the study. We have had some people from the county involved. These are Pensacola, Pensacola Sports, DIB, Florida West, our hockey owner, Greg, is here in the room. Our ICE tenants, our users, some other users that have used the building with White Tie Rock Ensemble, Island Fights, and Pensacola Mardi Gras, UWF, Pensacola State. So we've been reaching out, had some initial site visits. It was on June 3rd and June 4th, about a month ago. That was their initial visit to Pensacola. Took them around Pensacola downtown area to see the space and what's going on, because while we're contracted to study the Bay Center and the renovations for that, and then the expansion of the possibility of an event center What does that look like? Is it a multi-use flex space? Is it more of a convention center? Does it include ice? Does it not include ice? Is it sport court? Those kinds of things is what we're looking at. But also how that fits in the downtown area and the greater area of Escambia County. So they're in the middle of doing due diligence. We submitted all of our historical data for the Base Center for usage to see what can be projected for occupancy, what type of events we can recruit. They're in the process of reaching out to associations throughout the country, with sports organizations, convention organizations, to see what the interest is, what the seasons look like, this Pensacola market that they would be interested in getting into, basically bringing all that back to the table to then work with Populous, which is part of the dual study, is for them to come up with some new renderings, some new concepts, some new costing estimates for what that could look like, to bring to the table to decide and take a look on what we want to do in the future. So while that study is primarily focused on the Bay Center and the Bay Center property, we are keeping in mind what's going on around us. And as we get further into that, we will collaborate with more individuals in the community, stakeholders, with the county and with the city to see where we can go with that. In addition to that study and what we're doing, the ice floor has been pulled up. So we've seen a lot of equipment out in the front parking lot. That's the new ice floor that's going in. We have already put out the bids for repaving parking lots, redoing the fencing, redoing the lighting, redoing the sound. The lighting system is original in the building, so it'll be the first time it's been switched over to the new LED sport lighting. All of that will be implemented by October 1 with the new hockey season. That was the $10 million investment that we started with from there. So that's kind of where we're at. We don't want to have any product to deliver to you at this point. Our goal is it's typically a 16-week time frame to do both of those studies. But our delivery, our goal that we're looking for is September, October, to be able to bring that back forward. And we're here to hear and what you both have to say and how we can incorporate from both the city and the county's perspective on where we want to go. What can we do to maximize what we're doing?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And I just want to put out there, some discussions were from on the county side was what was the interest in the future of the Bay Center. And Wes and Michael Rhodes was there that day. And the Bay Center, the county's been subsidizing for quite a while. And my biggest concern, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, was that whatever we end up going with down the road, we have to have a return on investment. We can't keep losing money. I mean, we've lost, I had Stefan put out the numbers over the last several years, from 20 to 25, we've put in over $10 million into the Bay Center. So, and we got what Mobile's doing. We know they're going to be a competing market, and I think our market's better. They're putting in quite a bit more money than I think we will, but I think we'll have a better venue. But that was one of our biggest concerns. And then all the other stuff that comes up with sports versus convention center versus hybrid. You don't have any data on that back yet at all of where they're leaning money?
No, they're still looking to see. They're going to take all considerations in and basically tell you, okay, if you put an ice sheet in, this is what it's going to do. If you put in a flex space with a sport court, this is what it's going to do. If you're going to do more of a convention center, this is what it's going to do. We're going to bring all those options back to you instead of just saying, hey, this is one thing that's really going to fit, so then we can decide as a community what you really want to do. In addition to that new space, what we talked about and presented before that concept even got discussed about putting something else down here was to reduce that subsidy down to zero. With the renovations of the building, the space that you're in right now would become a club level. So then that gives you another amenity that's out in other communities that have other buildings, newer buildings. This building was opened in 1985. It's 40 years old. It's built what was used to, as back then in the 80s. So this updates it, but it gives us new revenue streams, new models to be able to reduce that subsidy. Right now we're at $1.3 million a year. We've been coming in ahead of budget the past 5 years so far, so we're trending in the right direction. And I think with these new improvements that we specifically focus, and if that's all we do, then that's all we do. But it will improve the building operation, but there is some opportunity to capitalize and, bring another space into it to help enhance this facility.
I think it's worthwhile, Mike, too, to say, one of the things that came out of the study was that the building itself is in, has got good bones. And as you know, over in Mobile, they're gonna spend over $300 million, which I know from what we've been told by them, that they think that this venue, we could do much less than that with a makeover. So we'll see what comes out of the study, but, I think that was good. Do you want to mention anything about our conversation with OVG, just since they're a competitor? I mean, because I know you've worked with them, or I don't know, Mayor, have you worked with OVG?
Okay, I just have.
Yeah, that was me. I mean,
Well, do you want to do questions, and then we'll do that? Any questions to Mike right now?
Yeah, Mike, so I'm certainly not going to speak for everybody up here, but I would just say from my experience, it feels like from the community, there's a general consensus that priority one is the renovation of the Bay Center. Probably before we talk about another facility or sports conference, ice, or anything else. If we all have, if there's some general, if I assume, and I'm making the assumption, that there's a general consensus around a 40-year-old building needing some much, overdue TLC, is this study going to be focused on the intensity of that renovation and what the return on investment is? In other words, to put it simply, here's a 40 million, here's a 60 million, here's a 70 million, or 30, 40, 50. How much of this study that you're going to do is going to be focused on helping county commissioners, city council members, administration make a decision on what's the correct level of intensity of the renovation of this building?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. And so the study was focused on really looking more at the new facility, because that's what we already presented something to do something with this facility. So that doesn't mean we're not having this group take a look at it. What did we do? And they're going to say, yeah, that was right. Or no, that wasn't quite right. Maybe you need to adjust it. Instead of doing this type of food and beverage enhancement, you need to do this. This is the trends that we're seeing in other locations. Because when we did this study first, it was with Populous, which is an architect. CSL, we have brought them in. They're the ones that go in and look at actually feasibility, market studies, what the demand is. They take more into context for that, not just what can we do with the buildings. So we are focused on it. They are going to come back and look at what can happen with the building. And it's flexible as we go through the study. We've had conversations even when we had the meetings with the stakeholders. It's okay, we're in this direction, but we get the feedback, now maybe we need to pivot and go this direction.
Yeah, it just feels like, and I know you guys agree with this, the intensity of the renovation of this building is a sliding scale as it pertains to Board Chair Kohler's question about operational costs, right? So I'll give an example. If there's more club seats where you can charge more money for those club seats, and there's more revenue for the operator and for the county, then that helps mitigate the subsidy. So it's not as simple as just saying, should we spend 30, 40, or 50? Because I imagine what the final financials are in terms of the years after that maintenance and operation is going to be dictated by what the initial capital investment is. And whether it's OVG or ASM, whoever it is that's operating the building, it is going to say, well, we have this many scoreboards to sell this many ads, and that helps us undercut it. Is that a fair
That's
assessment?
absolutely, completely fair. And that's what we did when we did some of the modeling previously. There were some assumptions in there, but we looked at our buildings and what we've done, over 400 that are out there worldwide, is to look at different markets, different size, scale it down to what we feel like it fit here. So for example, you look at naming rights, what did that potentially really do? Smoothie King in New Orleans, they get $1 million a year for an 11-year agreement. Is that going to happen here? No. So we assumption we bring that back down to where it's maybe a 250, 400 number. We've never had naming rights here for this building in the market, but part of ASM and their relationship with Legends is they have a complete division that does that. So we bring that to the table and we put that in there. But even going into looking at, you add a point of sale. We know if you add one more point of sale or one more food and beverage location, it's going to turn out $1,600 per event. And you add these amenities, you increase the capacity or the audience, you get X amount more shows, you get X amount more per cap per show, and that's how you drive that revenue.
Yeah. Last thing was, I guess that is when is a decision made on that menu? Here's A, here's B, here's C, larger capital investment, bigger return or bigger investment by an operator. When in the timeline, in your opinion, that's why I asked, is it part of this study, or is that a decision that's already been made?
It's not a decision that's been made, no. The study is to bring back options to say, here's what we recommend, or here's what the studies recommend, here's what the data recommends, but it's gonna give you, here's a recommendation, if you wanna do this, this is what you're gonna get. If you wanna do that, this is what you're gonna get. So it's basic, and that's what we did previously when we brought in the 3 different options. We said, look, here's our rock bottom budget, but then here's the flip the script pie in the sky. If you didn't have a budget to worry about, if you wanted to build, and you didn't have to worry about money, this is what you could do, and this is what it'll give you. And so from A to B, you would get all the options.
I guess what we're saying is it thinks about the same, it's the same thing, but I wondered if it was gonna be hyper-focused on just this building. Because I think the menu option before also surmised that this would happen or that would happen outside the building. I wondered if there was gonna be just an isolated study on X dollars in here means this, just this building itself, as opposed to.
This study is not just that. So, yeah, I mean, that's a component. I would say we're really focusing more on what, if we want to do the new building, what is that going to cost? Because when we show the options, when we had flipped the script, there was a $27 million number plugged in for an ice sheet, and then an X amount of number for a 50,000 square foot building in the back parking lot. We're looking at diving into that more to see what's going to happen. Now, again, with that, when you go that direction, your operation subsidy is going to be there. You know, on average, most convention centers are going to lose about $400,000 a year. But we were focused on, okay, if we want to add that amenity, that type of facility, ice, rec space, whatever it is, it's going to operate at a subsidy. We better reduce the subsidy and make a profit on this building to be able to offset that.
But Mike, I think what I'm hearing the mayor say, we're talking this building in the parking lot, we're not talking that hotel across the street. I think the tech center maybe, but we weren't including the geographical area outside of what the county owns, correct?
We are not including those areas, correct, but we're not blinded to that. That is being taken into consideration. We're not actually fully studying it. The initial conversations with Bill from CSL when he came in, one thing that he really highlighted was that whatever we do, you need to have a host hotel. You know, you need to have a parking garage. These are some components that are going to be part of it. Now, you talk about budget numbers that get you out of what we've been talking about, but we're certainly looking at it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner.
I certainly know we're restricted to public property or municipal properties. But 2 initial points. One is, school board should be at the table, because if you look at a convention center or a sports center, they're gonna utilize it a lot more in terms of usage, whether it's graduation, whether it's state tournament, so they should be on the front end and contributing it. Secondly, I don't know how we just look at the base center and restrict it to just the location of this property without looking at the properties to both sides of us. You can't expand a convention center without a hotel and a restaurant. You have to look at all of it. So, here we go. We look at this from a public perspective, and then we have the private sector coming in, and what it does is it delays moving forward. When Commissioner Barry and I first came on board in 2012, Crossroads, we were doing studies for the base center back then. You're talking about the good moments, and it's always, because we don't have all the players at the table, it's always hindered. So I hope that all those things are looked at, even if we have to expand the scope of what we're doing with the study with them, to make sure we are looking at the hotel, and we're looking east, west, north, and south of what we do to be able to expand or renovate the facility. Because, we can come in and put some lipstick on it, but if we don't do it properly, then someone's gonna be handling this situation again in 10 years. So I hope that it's all of us. So I just wanted to add that, and I don't know if that's where it is, but from my perspective, we have to look at all of it, Mike. If we don't, what are we doing? We can do as many clubhouses as we want, we can do as many concession sites as we want to sell, but if people can't park, people don't feel comfortable coming, what are we doing? Everything to the outside affects the inside, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and that's why this is such a great conversation, is to hear that from both the city and the county, is where do you want us to go? We were given a specific scope to look at this building and adding an additional facility. We didn't have the scope to look at the area altogether when we executed it and entered into this. If we need to adjust that, we hear that from you, then we can take a look at that.
Well, Mike, that's a good segue, because, you know, we've all had the opportunity to tell you kind of the Board of County Commissioners and some of the staff, but for the city council, this is your opportunity to put some stuff out, drive this, so, before this study's done again, if anyone has some suggestions, I think this is the time to ask Mike to go back. I'm not trying to force anyone to talk, but.
If I may, you said, conference or ice or multi-sports. I'm kind of interested in the and. Like, do we conference and ice? Like, instead of looking at each one individually, what combinations work together? And I only heard horse. I don't know if it was just because I wasn't listening good, or if we're looking at those combinations also.
Absolutely. What you're seeing, the way buildings were built, they were built for multi-use. But now you're seeing complexes built where you have a specific theater set for, you know, a 3,500 cap. You have an arena with a 10,000 cap. You have a convention center connected to, you have all those specific facilities. Because if you try to, you know, hit everything in one, you're really not doing it very good. And that's what you're seeing in a lot of markets, and that's what's coming back from CSL from the initial conversations. And they're going to provide more examples of that, of other buildings and what they've done. We're trying to get all the feedback from all the stakeholders in the community. What do they want to see? We've heard convention space. We can get convention business, so taking a look at that. We've heard rec space, indoor sports is a big tourism opportunity. It can also serve local residents as well during the week. When the weekends are typically taken up with sport competitions. But if you do sports, then those conventions, the higher end conventions, they're not going to go into a building like that. So that's why we're looking to see how we can do that with the consideration of the budget that's available, or the funding that's available.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions, Councilman Patton?
First, I guess I should address your comment about OBG. So just to be clear, I was introduced to someone from OBG through a contact, and in exploring what all of this is about, what it looks like, I haven't been included on any of the ASM meetings, so I haven't had the opportunity to be educated by ASM. But they graciously, one of the principals agreed to come to town, take a look around, help me understand a little bit more about what is possible, what their thoughts are on our market. And so I grabbed that opportunity. And so some of us have had conversations with them. Frankly, I'm not averse to competition either, but that's not really, that wasn't the purpose of my conversations with OBG and our discussions with OBG. It's really just what is, you know, how do we get additional perspective on what might be possible and what might fit our market. So that was really the purpose. But just going back to the base center renovations for a second. So have we established a goal for what, I mean, we talk about we can renovate it at this level, that level, this level, we have a budget. To me, it all comes down to, you know, the financial modeling and what the numbers look like, obviously from a feasibility standpoint, but as it relates to, you know, what we're trying to achieve for the community, because doing studies and not really knowing what we're, you know, what our end goal is usually very helpful. And so I guess, do you guys have, you know, 3 bullet points that really encompass your goal for your study?
Yes, thank you for that. And we certainly know a lot of people with OBG. So we have a lot of former employees that work with us and now work with OBG. In our business, we share a lot of information and work together. So I wouldn't say there's really a bullet point list. There has been a scope that was defined in the study that we engaged in, but we're focused on how do we renovate the building to update it, and how do we provide an operational model to reduce the subsidy to 0. Those are 2 higher level, you know, top goals. And then the last was to look at additional space, if there was additional funding to add that to it. We had to boil it down to it. That's what our goal for the study is.
That's, okay, that makes certainly sense from a high level. I guess for me, and this is what I haven't really understood, is we've talked about the different iterations of what might happen here. So just as a citizen, I come to the Bay Center 2 times a year, 3 times a year. I'll come to a nice Flyers game periodically, maybe a graduation. I don't know, there's events here, local events. But there's not much here that really draws me. And that's just me. I'm not speaking for anybody else in the community. But if you're really, to me, trying to optimize the space, trying to meet the objectives of the broader community, I think we need to increase the variety of events, the quality of events. I mean, you can create club seats, but if you don't have the quality of an event that will draw people to pay a lot of money for those club seats, then I don't know how useful they really are. So, you know, realistically, I know that Mobile has it in plans, although it's a few years down the road, of course, their new facility. You know, we got the Wharf for concerts. I've learned a lot about that, you know, kind of market and what is around us. But can we attract, you know, events like concerts? Because some of these things are more regional. Like if a big act comes here, that's a regional draw. If Disney on Ice comes here, maybe not. Or, you know, White Tie Rock Ensemble is great, but I don't think they're a regional draw. They're not going to drive tourism. They're not going to drive, you know, hotel stays and that sort of thing. So how are we thinking about, you know, that in the context of the different renovation options that you're proposing?
Absolutely, those were taken into consideration, and so when you look at content, we have diversified our content. We've gotten into more urban shows, we've gotten more comedy shows than we have in the past. And personally, we're disappointed on our end. We're trying as much as we can, but our rock and country, our bigger acts, they haven't been coming through. The Wharf is a competition with us because partly due with their seats. So if a show comes in and an artist is guaranteed to make X, and you have to be able to, you know, sell X amount of tickets at a certain price level. For the Wharf, they could sell it at $50. For us to make it work, it's going to have to sell it $100, and our market may not fill that. So what we've looked at is increasing our capacity. Right now, we're at 6,800. So for example, the Wharf opens their doors at 10,000. So automatically, they have 3,000 more seats that they can sell. That's more inventory. They can reduce their price. They can get people there to it. I know a lot of people in the community, they would love to rather come to a show here than drive over to the Wharf, 100%.
It's also air conditioned.
It is, and you know, what about rain outs and all that kind of thing, but in the touring business, it comes down to money. You know, the artists are out there to make money, and if they can't find a way to have a promoter take the risk to bring them into the market to make that, then they'll skip. A lot of it goes into the touring cycle. You know, if they book at certain buildings and availabilities, this building is, maybe New Orleans is available and Jacksonville's available, but we're not. But then when we're available, New Orleans isn't, or Jacksonville isn't, so they have to get from A to B on the road to get there. So those are some challenges of why content kind of goes up and down. We are looking at trying to, you know, help enhance that. Our Sanger Theater's done a great job with Jeff and his team over there about getting different content in. But that's a different space, and you have different cycles of artists. You know, there's a lot of artists that are now playing stadiums that used to play arenas. You kind of see that it kind of comes full circle. It comes back. But, so our challenge for booking those types of shows is capacity. Also, our rigging is a very hard building to rig in. So when you come in, you hang the lights and sound and so forth. They have to have the steel to be able to hang that because of the configuration of it. If they have to come in and hang 30 points, they have to bridle them, which doubles their points, which doubles their labor. And when you have overtime labor at midnight, that increases their cost, and they're about, again, travel, expenses, and money. Our loading docks, we don't have loading docks. So we have looked at this model of increasing capacity, increasing the rigging capabilities, not only in additional points where we can hang, but also increase our weight capacity. Right now, our weight capacity is 125,000 pounds. These bigger acts that are going out, they're over 125,000, so we can't hang it, we can't bring it in. When you look at loading, Cirque du Soleil or Trans-Siberian Orchestra, or those types of shows, they're coming in with 15, 18 trucks. They have to unload those in a very quick manner, and for them to come in off the road and take a day or two extra to load in to do their show here, it's a day or two they could be somewhere else playing another show making money. So those are three main things that we've looked at as far as being able to help increase that content.
So each of the options then will either include those upgrades, which would allow for that additional,
I would say
capacity.
every single option will include that, yes, ma'am.
But Mike, one of the, and maybe Councilman Bennett knew, when we talked to OVG, and this is something that I was kind of concerned as a threat, they had a good point. They said, you know, if the mid-size act comes through Florida and they play Orlando, Miami, Jacksonville, Tampa, and they can go to New Orleans, are they gonna have a fifth show here if they're on the road? And, you know, I thought it was a good point. I mean, so I think the marketing strategy is gonna have to be pretty robust to, you know, after we get this set up. So that was one of the things. The other thing, I appreciate the conversation that Councilman Bennett and I had. I think OVG definitely thinks this will be a threat to their market. I do. I appreciated their honesty. But I think if you did a SWOT analysis on what we have, I obviously think our location's way better than theirs. I actually think because the cost is a lot better. I think we have a lot of opportunities around the area. So I think we do have a lot of, you know, positives there. But, and we will be in competition with Mobile, and your people even said that as well. And that's something everyone needs to realize. It's out there. It's a fact. So.
But I do think they said, the feedback was on the conference center, if that was a direction that we were headed in, that we would have that really Mobile wouldn't be as much of a direct competition for that market. Obviously, the event market and the Bay Center is a whole different story, but yeah.
Absolutely, their convention space, we couldn't build something like that to be able to compete. The dollar amount that it would take would be astronomical.
Just very quickly, simplistic as it is, but what I've heard through the years is the reason people don't want to come to concerts here is the sound system. They just don't like it. I mean, it's not as compact, it doesn't sound as good as the Sanger and the smaller, you know, and in the very beginning, I think of this building, they had messed up the acoustics, then came back through and tried to fix it, and I think that it's just really never satisfied people.
So that, yeah, when they first opened the building, they actually installed the acoustic panels back when she was there. So, those have been fixed. We are in the process of replacing the sound system, and that's the PA sound system. But now, when you come in for a concert, that's not the building sound system. It's the show. It's what they bring with it, and it's their engineers. We did rebuild Northwest Florida with Willie Nelson and Kenny Rogers, and you know, if that sound engineer comes in and he's happy, we go and say, hey, they can't hear it over here, stage left or stage right. And he's like, I can hear it fine. And unfortunately, they call the show. We do everything we can. But the PA system is going to be upgraded. And they are looking at the acoustic treatments as well, because you do have a high ceiling. Our ceiling's 85 to 95 feet tall. There's no baffles up there. So when we're looking at the sound system, is being able to include some of those to help with that engineering. So when a show comes in, they load in at 8 a.m. and we open doors at 6 o'clock. Show starts at 7. Once they get everything in set by 3, they've got from like 3 to 5 to really throw out their mics, get their feedback, and really dial it in. It is a challenging room to do. As far as reconfiguring the space to be able to do that and enhance that, we're probably not going to be able to do that, but we can do that with certain acoustic.
So, I wanted to say that we have a lot of challenges, right? But we can fix those. Those are all fixable things. I have come here a couple times and left because I couldn't find parking. Parking's terrible too. And we know that sound system's bad, lots of improvements we need to do. But to the mayor's point, and I think everyone else has been talking about, we're looking for bang for the buck. So that's why we're talking about, you know, a study that encompasses, you know, more than just the immediate area. And size matters, because size is going to depend, it's going to be dependent on who we get for acts, and then it's going to affect parking. So I think that's important. The flex space idea versus dedicated convention space, I think I mentioned this before. I like dedicated space, but I think we need flex space too, because I think we need it. If we don't have anything great, then we won't do great things. We need to have a good, dedicated, I think, space for conventions. But we need to have some flexibility too. Maybe that's another building, maybe it's the same building, I don't know. But parking, I think, is a big problem, and I think we need to have, this is something that's, I'm always thinking on this, it's almost the only reason why I'm here, is I don't want to do it on the cheap. I know we got to do it the best we can, just like when you go buy a house, you get the most house you can afford. I want to get the best thing that we can get. And I think that I'm excited to find out what the study says and what the options are going to be, because then we're going to figure out, I mean, in my mind, I'm going to be looking for certain things. I'm looking for the price, but I'm also going to be looking at the return, you know, what we can actually get if we do this. If we do this, you know, in the long term, what the effect is going to be. Because coming back and redoing it is going to be a lot more expensive, and it's going to be a missed opportunity. I just want to do what we can at the beginning instead of, you know, regret at the end.
So I know we keep talking about parking, and someone had mentioned the tech park earlier. Is there a world in which maybe not your study, but the study that we're doing with the city, that we can include the tech park and kind of master plan that? And I think maybe what we could do is parking and master plan the tech park area, because whoever works at the tech park is going to have somewhere to park Monday through Friday, but then most of the events here in the evening or on the weekend, so maybe that parking structure could double as supporting the tech park and the Bay Center.
Well, I won't speak for Smith G, they'll come up and present that, but what I can tell you is different from this study. They are looking at Tech Park, Grand Hotel, the greater district, the traffic, all of those things. I'll let them speak to that. But I did want to say, you know, we kind of have, the analogy would be, all of us have one car in the garage, and it's a 23,000 square foot facility right here. So to Commissioner May's point, is the school district here? Well, our funnel stops at one 23,000 square foot space, so that's why UWF, Pensacola State, Santa Rosa County Schools, Escambia County Schools, ICE, concerts, we have such a bottleneck because we have one facility that's 23,000 square feet. So regardless of where it goes, that's not an opinion on what the second facility is. But I just wanted to circle back. That was the line of questioning I had, or I guess my statement is, that's why being hyper-focused on priority one, which is if we all agree that the Bay Center is 41 years old and something needs to happen here regardless of what the second facility is, should the decision, like Commissioner Sternberger pointed out, of having a quality facility that we're sitting in right now be priority one, and then dovetailed with that would be, okay, well, this would leave this amount over, and then let's see what we can do with that, versus trying to put the puzzle together two pieces at a time that could undercut the quality that happens here, the shows that we get. I think the show part is chicken and egg, right? I mean, you gotta have a nice facility and be able to increase ticket sales, so is it the chicken, is it the egg? But anyway, I just, what we do know for a fact is there's a 23,000 square foot bottleneck, that every fiesta, coronation, every single thing has to take place in the city of Pensacola on one facility, and just having something else would certainly, whatever that is, would decrease some of that bottleneck. And I just wonder what the priority, and what's the menu option to say, here's our return on investment for 40 million in this building, 50 million in this building, 60 million, without getting it too confused with, and also 25 million for this or 30 million for that. I'm not looking for a response to that. I just mean that's kind of what my thinking is.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ray, you're not looking for a response, but I will respond because I guess some of my colleagues have said, why are we here? To me, we're here because it has to be a collaboration. It has to be a collaboration of resources, and at the end, it's going to come to money. I mean, to me, there's three questions. What do we want? What do we need? What can we afford? And I think here's the day to say what we want, to not have a city study that's conflicting with a county study. How do we all get together? You know, in my mind, we already have a parking lot. We just need to put some more spaces right across the street through the Bay Center. You know, Commissioner Holbrook may say that, you know, it needs to go to the tech park. But I think, you know, as council people, as a mayor, as a county, we all, in the citizens, should say what we want. And, you know, as he gave the reference to a house, I know that I want a $3 million house. And so design the $3 million, but I can't afford it. I'm going to get $1 million house. And so I think that we should have a discussion with input, with your consultants, our consultants today, of what we want with input, without even putting a price tag on it. We keep saying a price, we shouldn't even have a price tag. So once we get what we want,
then maybe what we need, and then what we can afford, and then we figure out how do we pay for it, because you're absolutely right. Once we get what we want, it's not regional, but it's within the circuit. Destin, all the way back to Guthrie, Santa Rosa, we got Okaloosa, Santa Rosa, that all use this center. We have school districts, so it may not just be the city that's participating in the funding. It may be other entities, private entities, and other public entities. But if we get caught up on the price tag, we're never going to get what we want or what we need for the community. So to me, we should just eliminate talking about price, get the design, and get what we want with the input of the citizens.
In the interest of time, if anyone wants to make a few more comments, I would like to go ahead and wrap up a few things you had, and then we'll go to your brief. No, you're up. Go ahead.
I just have one question. So it's no longer, or it's not on the table to tear down and rebuild, just to be clear?
I don't think that's an option. For cost purposes, it would be out of, well, I think the county, well, I just don't think we can afford it, to be honest. And Mike, you would agree with that, right?
Correct. The Mobile was budgeted at $300 million. That was when they engaged in the agreement a year ago now. So that cost is gone up.
Okay, I just wanted that publicly stated, so I know whatever I envision in my mind is limited to what we already have.
Correct.
Well, and addition, not just this plus, this plus.
And if we're going to point that out publicly, I think it's important to point out both, I believe, OVG and Michael's team have everybody's of the consensus opinion that the bones of this building, it is clearly the most financially responsible thing to renovate this building versus, I think there's a lot of common perception because of the age of the building that why aren't we considering knocking it down? Because there's not a world of which it could either be afforded and the bones here are good enough to be able to, where someone would be able to walk in and hypothetically think they're in a new building and just be able to strip it down. Is that fair?
That is absolutely fair, and we have the data to back that up that Populous did with the facility condition assessment. That returned all those results. Now, yeah, there's still challenges, but those challenges can be fixed and addressed, and that's what we're looking at doing. And you look at from an affordability standpoint, the concept of going from 6,800 seats to 8,800 seats with adding 2,000 seats by taking out the back of the seats on the south end of the floor, creates a stage pocket that opens up those 2,000 seats. That price tag when we did it 2 years ago was around $500,000. So you look at, okay, you want to get a bigger facility, here's how we can do it at an economical way.
Yeah, a couple more, and then we'll move into, I think in continuity of what we're talking about, I think we should go to the city study after this, but go ahead.
Just real quick, I mean, to me, the whole idea of this is exactly what Commissioner May just said, is that we need, there's a study happening, I'm very glad that you're analyzing other facilities, I think that's great. We'll hear from the city's consultants in just a minute, but what we need to do is not only, I completely agree, we need to put the price tag aside, we need to figure out what we want, what our goals and objectives are, and then what it looks like to get there. But I also think that we, as public officials, don't fully understand the power of private investment in these types of projects. I think our consultants hopefully will be able to talk to us a little more about it. But to me, it's putting together the work that ASM is doing with the practical sort of feasibility of those types of improvements and how we put the whole package together in this area. And this can only happen if we collaborate together. So that was really my hope, what we come out of today. So thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like, if you don't mind, Mike, you can sit down there. Mayor, would you like, I know we're jumping around with it, but I think it'd be best if we had heard from Smith G. now, if that's okay with everyone.
Thank you, Board Chair Kohler. So just as a refresher for the public, I know you guys are aware we discussed this. Our goal was to say in tandem with, not in conflict to, the study that was already going on with ASM, we as the city and what I would want to propose to this city council and to you all was the opportunity to ensure that a city-sponsored study met the needs and deliverables of not just city administration and city council, but also the county commission. Because what we know is that investment in just this building has a reverberating impact throughout the region and certainly the surrounding area. And I agree with Commissioner May, and it's a big impetus to this study, which is what happens on this physical property has a great impact to the south, to the east, to the west, and north. Are we talking to neighbors about it? Are we talking to our community about it? And I certainly wouldn't put that, what I consider a more technical study with what ASM's doing, and they're in the business. I think that's great to have that information, but they're also in the business. I'd like to have someone who's not in the business of operating this facility. I'm sure they're going to do a great job on all those technical aspects, but someone who represents the city, the county, and all of us with really no other dog in the fight other than let's try to bring you the most objective data that we can. So I think these studies actually work really well together, is to say let's work technically on the side of the operator who knows a lot about this building, and let's have some folks come in with fresh eyes that know our community from previous studies and look at this. So the bottom line for this presentation, I appreciate you allowing us to put this on the agenda, is we haven't signed anything with them. I wanted to make sure that to afford the opportunity of our city council, of our county commission, to be able to answer any questions and ensure that this study is what they want it to be before we were able to engage with them at all. So I wanted this opportunity to do that, and certainly appreciate the time and allowing that to be on the agenda. Thank you.
Joe Show, looking forward to hear what you have to say.
Good morning. My name is Scott Wharton with Smith G Studio. We are a national design consulting firm that specializes in urban design and architectural projects and challenges exactly like this. And we're going to walk through today a brief presentation that will include some of our qualifications, some case studies that I think will speak to some of the same challenges that I've heard this morning, as well as our process that we have outlined, we feel is necessary to accomplish your goals and objectives. And lastly, and most importantly, we want to save some time for discussion and questions. So I will try to be as concise as possible in this first segment, and look forward to the conversation at the end. We're grateful to be here. It's really an honor to be part of such an amazing opportunity. And it is just that. While we are consultants, when we go to places like this and we see sites like the Bay Center and the surrounding parcels, this site has tremendous opportunity, and we think there's a tremendous win-win-win situation for both the city and the county who are investing in this area, but also to leverage private investment. And with the right plan that is adaptable, that is truly buildable, it's not just a plan that sits on the shelf, you can attract private investment that will greatly enhance the ability to leverage both your abilities to fund improvements, but also to fund capital improvements and expand the district at a natural progression. So, what I'll start with, Jose, correct? Thank you. So we are, again, we are an award-winning architectural firm, and so why that's important for this urban design study is we know buildings of every scale and shape, and when we draw urban design planning developments, we focus on what can be built. We want to see our work constructed. And so when you talk about development services and development plans, you really have to look at it, the different scales that they exist, right? And so there's really three, I mean, we could break it down into many different categories, but let's just say three different categories of development plans. You know, one is your city level plan, let's say the 60,000 foot level where, you know, that could be a CRA plan, for example. It really looks at the macro scale and says, look, these are some general comprehensive updates. These are some land use areas. These areas may need to be considered for further study. Okay, that's what you're getting. You're not getting something that somebody could come in and invest immediately in private development or capital development and say, okay, we're building this is possible. The next level really is your district and block plans, and I view this opportunity as just that level. And that's really dialing in, you're getting really more refined to development scenarios and options for this parcel of land that can be constructed. The private, you know, equity can come in and build. And it's adaptable over time as market conditions change. And you're really looking at a comprehensive plan that encompasses more than just a singular site, right? And then the last scale is really, maybe we could keep it at the Bay Center scale, as the individual block or individual building. And that's where you can get really granular. And that's really the study that's being done. They're able to look at very specific scenarios and outcomes for a building's performance and the return on investment. What's most important is that you select the right consultant services for what your goals and objectives are. And from our perspective, we believe that having a plan at the district level, which is an area that we have great expertise in, will allow you to leverage lots of different scenarios for the development and the recognition of private equity in and around the Bay Center site. Next slide, please. Another thing we'll touch on briefly is we have a lot of expertise in hospitality across the country. This one has a great opportunity with a site that's ripe for redevelopment with the right demand for users with the Grand Hotel. We think it's an amazing use, and if we get all the components working together, it can really ignite a lot of rapid growth and development for the Bay Center district. Next slide, please. Again, I touched on our urban design. You'll see that in many of our project examples throughout this. Next slide. So about us, we're 60 team members. We've been doing this together for 16 years. I'm joined here today with two of my business partners, Greg Tidwell and Fleming Smith. All three of us have experience in Pensacola, and we'll get to some of that here shortly. But we have great interest in Pensacola with some of that history with previous CRA city level studies and also some individual architectural and building level studies. Next slide. We're really about designing places that are for people to thrive in and for cities to thrive and for communities to thrive and grow and build economic growth and places where people want to be. Placemaking is at the core of our DNA, and collaboration is going to be a big part of how to accomplish that in this situation. These are just some examples of some of our core services I mentioned before. Next slide. Back one, please. Thank you. So having the right partners at the table is important. There is a variety of different consultants. If you get too many consultants in a room and too many various opinions, then that creates more challenges than you need. But I do think in this situation, it's uniquely at two different scales. As we've talked about in this previous conversation, ASM and the county, they have a very specific focus, and they want to see this successful and want to leverage the asset that they have with the abilities that they have. But they can't necessarily impact surrounding private development, privately owned development, or city-owned development or other partners. And so, we all have to understand what is the benefit to all. And having the right partners is important. And I think by looking at this site more broadly, looking at the greater context at a comprehensive level, is going to leverage the best results for all three parties. And I think that having a team that can work arm in arm in collaboration with the ASM team, but at the larger macro scale, is going to provide great benefit. We can't go into silos and create two separate plans. That's not the goal here. We are wanting to work together at the different levels so that we are knitting together the context around the Bay Center, the best solutions and options, both for the Bay Center itself and its the property that it has control over, but also the amazing opportunity that surrounds it. While we know there's constraints, what are the ways that we can look past doing that? And so we want to have the right consultants that can provide those solutions and answers. And so one of them is a trusted local consultant with HDR. HDR is going to be our civil and traffic consultant. We're not only going to be looking at things like access to parking, which is very important, by the way. It's probably the #1 driver of this entire site is parking availability drives development program, period. And that's universal across the board. But we're also going to be looking beyond just connectivity and access to the site. How does the entire system work around the site? Because when you're going to attract not only additional ridership and volume to both the Bay Center with its reinvestment, if you're getting that much private development around it, it's going to generate a lot of traffic. So we need to understand what that impact is and is there capacity and what improvements can be made. And not just for cars, but how can we look at more of a multimodal approach. We want people to access the site. We want the site to integrate back into the city, north, south, east, and west. How can the site integrate better into East Hill? And are there opportunities to connect better into downtown Bayfront? And so having them on board, I think, is critical to look at all those different scenarios. One of the other consultants was mentioned previously is CSL. CSL is a market analyst that specializes in convention sports and leisure. Coincidentally, through our independent research, we identified them as a consultant that we wanted to look at the larger impact to the economy of what the different scenarios at the macro level, what the ROI would be for Pensacola Community Counties. Subsequently, we learned that they are now have under scope and contract with the county and ASM, which is great. You know, they were recommended to us as experts in the industry. But with that said, we think we can leverage great opportunity by adding an additional marketing consultant that could look at more of the macro scale of the impact of the environments around the site. And again, with the capacity of the collaboration of those teams, we think that will provide great data and insight into how not only is it successful for ASM and the operations of the county and their responsibilities, but how is it going to affect the bottom line for the entire community? Next slide, please. So I'm going to walk through briefly some of our experience. You're on the right one, thank you. So again, our experience for Pensacola dates back to the late 2000s, where we were fortunate enough to work with the city on the CRA plan that was produced then. We got to learn a lot about, and really got to learn the lay of the land of the city. And even at that time, and if you know where the Bay Center is on that drawing, you can see a big purple asterisk there. Even at that point, there was macro, very global ideas about what should be on the site. We had identified this as a potential school location in 2008. There's been many studies done over time in the last 20 years that have looked at different solutions for the Bay Center site. You've seen everything from mixed use, residential, but all of them really at the city level scale, much like this. The CRA is a city level scale. That's the 60,000 foot. And so we're not thinking through the specific dynamics of how to leverage to make it happen and to leverage private investment so that they would be attractive. At this point it's just a drawing, but how do you make it something that could be a reality from the perspective of development? Next slide. Again, some of the CRA plans. Please keep going. Next. And then most recently, we've got the opportunity to be involved with a local adaptive reuse in Old Church with Billy Hall, which is amazing development, and we're excited to be part of, and glad to be able to stay there this week. So, next slide. Keep going. So I want to start, again, a little bit with the case studies. Number one, this is the first one, is the Gulch District in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where we are actually based. The Gulch, we started that project in 1999. It was a former train yard that was owned by CSX. We called it Black Bottom because it was so dirty from train use for centuries. And we had an interesting private sector development that thought that it would be a great opportunity to reinvest, because it was a prime piece of real estate of urban land, and it didn't have necessarily demand, but he saw a vision. So he hired us to take a look at this site, and in conjunction with working with the city of Nashville, a public-private partnership, they created a master plan that leveraged infrastructure dollars for an amazing new block network that really helped incentivize major regrowth and development. As you can look today, the Gulch is the #1 largest contributor to the tax roll in Nashville per acre. It is our largest tourism district outside of Broadway. It has more daily foot traffic than most downtown environments. It's rapidly grown into an amazing urban district. And I actually compare this a lot with the Bay Center because it's a similar scale, a little larger scale, but a similar location. It was downtown adjacent, right? And it was a way that, okay, we have this, and that's, I think what was the original intent was, for different reasons, was you wanted to look at the opportunity for expanding your downtown, the ability to create economic engines. And so I think this could be an amazing district for Pensacola and could really largely be driven by private sector investment. Keep going. So this is the Gulch. So again, that's the Gulch today. Next slide. I put this in here because we still have this in our files. This is when, these were on old slides. You know, we didn't even have photos of the Gulch. That's how old our work's been. But this was the original in 1999. And then the next slide shows you the Gulch today. Billions of dollars of capital has been invested, and it's very successful in a very short time. Next slide. I'm going to pick up the pace because I want to focus on a few areas. This is an area of Eastgate Mall in Cincinnati, Ohio. This is another example of a citywide scale where the mall actually was in receivership, so there's no ownership, and the city they wanted to have a vision plan. And so this is definitely at the city level scale. We want to provide guidance for any future private development partners, but that is going to require a lot of efforts in the city to accomplish. Keep going. This is a project in Chattanooga, Tennessee, downtown Chattanooga, called the Eureka Foundry. This study looked at 25 acres of private land, a former foundry for private development. But what was unique about it is the city of Chattanooga owned another 25 acres across the street that was parking for their soccer stadium and their college football stadium. They were underparked. It's a surface parking lot. They had no solutions, nowhere to expand. So the idea was, what if we created a PPP on this parking lot, created a multi-level deck, and that opened up the entire real estate on top of that surface parking lot to be private development. And you know, those are the types of wins that we look at trying to find. You know, keep going. Another example of that is the Sobro district in Nashville. I mean, this was half of our downtown in Nashville, and it was definitely that city level view, but in that, we dialed in and zoomed into very targeted areas. Those targeted areas have all been redeveloped over the last 5 years, including our downtown riverfront, Cindy Theater that we're involved in, the Convention Center District. And so just another example of how you can look at a very high level, but also focus on some priority areas. Keep going. Next. Oh, this is a really interesting project, Innovation District in Chattanooga. Again, downtown Chattanooga, looking at bringing jobs and industry into downtown, public-private partnership between several different foundations and corporations within the community. They were able to create a thriving innovation district plan that has attracted significant private investment, and it's been really great success story. Perhaps one of the most complex projects of my career. This was a city-owned property, the former fairgrounds, the state fairgrounds in Tennessee. And it had a complexity of stakeholders that had completely different outcomes and objectives. One was one of the NASCAR's oldest racetracks in the country. So you had racing enthusiasts that had very specific objectives. You had flea market vendors that are here every Saturday that had specific agenda items. And then we had a new MLS owner that was interested in attracting a new stadium. So, you know, we talk about sports stadiums. So you had all of these conflicting items, and how could they coexist and obviously be successful? But that was the tricky part. And so we spent over 2 years trying to work together. This was very complicated, by the way. So 2 years, not what I'm recommending here. But for this one, it just shows a variety of different stakeholders can all come to one solution and all win. Next slide. And today, we're actually doing photos for this right now, so I didn't have any, it's completely constructed, but I have the renderings here. Keep going. Going. And lastly, I just wanted to highlight a little bit of our hospitality. I think the hospitality component is really important, and you can just click through several of these. We have a lot of experience in hospitality and hospitality districts. We can definitely help navigate how to best connect and integrate the hospitality component with the hotel, food and beverage, and how best integrates within the Bay Center. So lastly, I want to talk about process. Again, a lot of what we want to hear is from you guys too. but from our experience, we have obviously some recipes for success in our process. So as was mentioned before, the target site on the screen here is the Bay Center in green. Obviously, there's certain ownership and commitment by the county to ensure that that asset is maximized. There's also the addition of Technology Park, which we think really is a great opportunity because we do have some level of control over it and we can explore that area. The third area is with the Grand Hotel and its parking lots. You know, if you look at all these different uses together, we think we can come up with a parking scheme that can really benefit everyone, regardless of their real estate footprint. You know, what's going to work best for all outside of boundary lines. And that goes even beyond what's publicly owned. You know, this is maybe our target study area because it's what you can control. But what we think is most important is to study what you can't control, because you could really open the door for private investment. That's a loud shout. I forgive you. I've tried to do that before. Which will be evident in our next slide. You know, there's an expanded study area, and as I think was alluded to by many comments previously, you know, the value here is to really look at a larger district. Even though you may not maintain ownership of many of these privately owned parcels, I think providing a vision plan that can be built, that's based on real buildings and mixed-use scenarios, will provide a roadmap, even for private equity, that can begin to really accelerate private investment around the basin. And there may or may not be outcomes that could have a PPP opportunity, you know, whether it's publicly controlled now or not. Next slide. So again, our process, while adjustable based on input, of course, we know that it has to be very deliberate, concise, and to accomplish your goals. So our first step is really in the discovery phase, and this is really our due diligence period, that we anticipate 30 to 60 days upon our start. And this is really working closely with both the county, the city, and primary stakeholders to ensure that the plan that we put in place for this process is going to accomplish everybody's goals. So we develop alignment with the process before we jump into the process. The second one, and perhaps what the most important phase of this process from our experience, is the engagement process. Well, what does that mean? You know, the community engagement means a variety of different things and provides a variety of different reactions based on experiences, right? But when we talk about a community engagement effort, one, you have to have the right people at the table, which is a lot of different things. Two, it has to be the right strategy to get focused results. You know, if you put everybody in the city of Pensacola in a room, they're going to have a million different opinions. So you start out in a big funnel, right? You can envision a funnel. You want to start out with listening to lots of different thoughts, so people feel heard and that they have been part of a process and invested their time in the future of the basin development. But it's our job to come up with the community engagement plan, and we have tools to do that. That gets that funnel smaller and smaller each step of the way through the process, so that while at the end of the day, the recommendations that come before you from us aren't necessarily black and white. There's some flexibility there, but it provides, it's not something that is going to be universally accepted, but you know, that's impossible. You know, consensus at this large of a scale is not feasible, but respect for the process and respect for the outcome, the benefit that it provides the city can be accomplished across the board. The last step really is combined with refinement, and the final deliverable is, at the end of the day, we want to provide something that provides a roadmap that not only you can open up and share with other political entities, but you could sit down with the developer and they would be able to say, I love that, that's amazing, I want to do this. And so we wanted a plan that can really be implementable on day one, but also, again, can't reinforce enough, flexibility is key, flexible to adapt to different market conditions. You know, one of the things that we've seen throughout the country in lots of areas is when we're trying to attract private development, some cities may spend grant dollars to develop infrastructure, road networks, you know, provide new sewer. That's all great, good, but sometimes that can really put you in trouble. Many times it does. Nashville's a great example of that. There was a project we worked on for Roy Mill, where they came in and made everything pad ready, and they thought they were going to get everybody chomping at the bit. Well, the problem is, they did that based on a citywide plan, and so they drew these streets off of something that's looking at something from an airplane versus really thinking through the different scenarios. So when it came down to a developer coming in and looking at it, there wasn't any developable parcels because none of those sizes worked. Parking structures didn't fit. You know, you couldn't get anything in the blocks because nobody put some thought into that. And I say that story just because that's a critical thing. Anybody can draw boxes on a page from a high level, and what that plan does for you may not meet your goals. And I think you guys need something a lot more tight that can be implementable with the private sector immediately. Next slide, please. Talking about that engagement process, I wanted to bring up one example. This was a mixed income development in downtown Chattanooga, 120-acre site, over 3,500 units, million square feet of non-residential, includes a variety of retail social service. But the engagement component for this one was really critical. When you work in environments like this, it's essential to develop trust in the process and to do it quickly so that you get maximum results. And this was a great example. During the pandemic, we had to get really creative and come up with new solutions. Next slide, please. We looked at lots of different digital, both in-person and virtual environments, which was essential because access to the internet was limited. And so we know the different groups and stakeholders have different needs, and so we will accommodate those different stakeholder groups. Next slide. We incorporated public art in the process, which, you know, there was a huge focus, School for the Arts there, so that was a major value. Keep going. But looking at both, this was both an in-person physical where people could put ideas on a poster board, but they could also vote on their phone. And so, you know, thinking about how to be innovative to get more, better results and more results in information. Keep going. Both in digital format, keep going. And then, again, documenting all of this, documenting the process, reporting back to the community, you know, it is part of the reinforcement to get the best results in the engagement process. Keep going. And there's the final result, you know, 150-acre match. Keep going. So, again, I wanted to touch back on the expanded study area because, you know, looking at it, while many of you may see complexity within the various ownership, we also see tremendous opportunity. You know, from our experience, not looking at that just because it's not controlled is really the biggest mistake you can make because the benefit to both the city and county's efforts are immense by including these private sector. Next slide. So, with that, again, I probably went through that quickly because I really do want to save time for this valuable conversation. Happy to come back to any questions you have to the presentation, but I really just want to dive into your thoughts on the process, any questions you may have for us.
I think Q&A would be good. Anyone from the city want to start first? I have a few questions, but I want to. Well, the timeline I know you have January 26th. I'll explain a little bit more why I'm just having independent urgency with what the legislature is talking about. TDP taxes could dismantle this project as a whole. Is that January 26th a hard line for?
No, sir. Again, we're wanting, obviously, work with the county. We don't know the milestones or the various needs and timelines. We can back into anything to a degree. And so what is important is you have enough time to have a meaningful engagement. Now, that can look like a lot of different things. Fast track. This was a very broad draft schedule. with what knowledge we have.
Second question I had, so it sounds like you're doing two, what I call COAs, course of actions. You're gonna have a larger district plan, and then the other plan will be what you highlighted to the mayor in his letter, the brand as well as the tech park.
It'll be not two deliverables per se, we just might have, there's more focus on those three areas. I just wanted to say it's critical that we look at a broader context.
And one last question, and it has to do with the tech park, and I don't know if they know this, Mayor, but I know we have 2 members on the PDC. Part of the tech park, we're being told, may have 2 businesses. Are you looking at that potentially, the whole tech park, or potentially not the whole tech park in this study?
Well, it depends on what's under contract or LOI. Obviously, we think that's amazing. If somebody's on board already, we want to work with them. It's an asset.
Well, we don't know yet, but we're being told that there's 2, so it's an outlier that could potentially be an issue with the tech park.
We view that as an asset. If there's somebody on board, we want to work with them, and I think they will get maximum benefit out of working with us to leverage their investment in whatever they plan to do.
I don't have any information. Any questions? No one has any questions? Oh, okay.
I always have a question. But to your point on the tech park, it does look like there's, a very serious, potentially, MOU or LOI in the future, very serious business that really wants to locate there. But to your point, I think that working now is the time to work with that, owner of that business to determine how, and I think they'd be more than willing to work with us to figure out how what they're doing there can enhance the greater, project that we have. And it's only, I think, to their benefit, honestly. So I think it's really, yes, the PEDC controls the tech park, and Florida West is actively marketing the tech park, and we have a couple of potential businesses there. One, I think, that is very serious. But I still think that we can, accomplish all of our objectives as long as we're starting now and working together on it. So, and then I would just say that for me, the most important thing, we do a lot of studies. We did a maritime master plan, park master plan, and you guys just got done with OLF 8. And all of those were more visioning and, sort of, this is what it could look like. What has to come out of this, for me, we do, I think, have a relatively short timeline to work with. It's a plan that not only takes into account, obviously, all the stakeholder feedback from here, which it should, but comes with the lens of developers and what is actually doable, feasible, and I mean financially feasible, where we don't necessarily, from a public perspective, have to bear the burden of all of the cost. And so that's what I want to see. I want to see something that we can say is marketable to private developers on the day we get it, and not something that we have to go out and try to attract, development after the fact and maybe change because it wasn't designed in the way that would attract the capital. So.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, we are going to have, the market consultant in us is going to specialize both in mixed-use development, market studies, what is the market over the next 10 years. But we also want to pull in a development consultant that can look at the costs, to look at the ROI on it. If the city or county are interested in PPPs, then you need to have that information in order to attract those people to the table. And so, for example, there's so many different ways to do partnerships, from fee simple transactions to land leases. I mean, we don't even know, there's a million possibilities how to leverage private investment, public land or private. And we want to look at all those options. But at the end of the day, whatever bucket it falls in, it's got to be something that attracts them and that is built. And so having a master developer on our team to look at it through the lens of what's actually developable in the market, what can be financed, and what people will find a good return on that they would find attractive, is going to be an integral part of our study.
That's great. And just one last question. CSL, it sounds like, is under contract with ASM. But I wonder if they're already, doing that work and learning everything that they're learning about, the Bay Center and the whatever other event space. it is that they're projecting financially for. Wouldn't it maybe make sense to extend some of that work, you know, for
Let
the
me
other
address that.
economic impact?
We talked about this yesterday. One of the concerns is, I believe, correct me, that CSL is actually part of ASF. So that was my concern.
Okay.
So I think it still works out great. It doesn't mean that it validates those results, but I think if we're gonna have independence of two studies, let's not have one synergetic under that is under the same family of companies as the operators themselves.
And to add to that, it's more about we need additional scope of services when we're looking at the broader context, beyond just what is the current scope under their contract. So, you know, finding the right partner that can look at it from that scale and that industry expertise, we think is an important part. And we look forward to talking more with the ASN team and CSL and Populous about, you know, their specific scope. So we don't want to overlap it. We're not studying the same thing with different consultants. That's not the goal here. We want to be collaborative and add value to what's already in process.
And maybe this is for the mayor. The difference between their study and what ASM is doing is they're including the Grand Hotel and the Tech Park. I mean, at first I heard us saying it's a collaborative study, then I heard two independent studies. There's this independent where they're gonna study the Grand and the private side and the Bay Center, or what's the difference between what Mike's doing?
What I heard is the immediate area around, and I think you just saw several examples, that when someone does something for tens of millions of dollars, they don't just stop at the parking lot and look at the greater opportunity. Number one, I would say the number one motivation I have about this is the leverageable asset that we would have as a community to say, why is it that we should only be taking on any improvements in the Bay Center, anything on our own, with whatever bond dollars you guys decide that you want to use, or DIB, or the city? You know, why would the government say, well, why can't we take the dollars that we have, the finite dollars that we have, that isn't going to be enough to do every wish list thing that everybody wants? Why would we not look at opportunities to leverage? And when we've tried that in previous years, we haven't had we haven't had the asset that they're speaking of. So we've gotten one offer or no offers, and they're unsolicited, and we haven't run any numbers, and you know. So I think that's what's potentially fed into roadblocks. You guys would certainly, you know, on that day to day, could probably give even more insight there. But I think that, and yeah, the tech park. I mean, the conversation of the tech park, I agree. If somebody's ready, you know, we've heard that for a long time. I'm not saying that this one isn't serious. I've met with those folks too. But the reality is it's been empty. And I think it's responsible of us, if we're going to do a district-wide study, to look at private property and the greater district. How much private property is in that larger blue box that they showed? That's much of that is private property, but if it's a vision of what this could be, that doesn't mean it's designing every window, every door. It means, great, if a company comes in, two companies come in the tech park, do they need parking next to it? Do they want to turn it this way or that way? I mean, I think there's lots of great synergy. That doesn't, including the tech park, does not mean we shouldn't do anything at the tech park that isn't already moving along. I think it's still a visioning study. It's not something, in my opinion, correct me, it's not that means, well, if we study the tech park, that means we're going away from any efforts that are happening.
No, and it was just a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor, because I believe we should study it all. I mean, how do you make Powell Falls more walkable to the Bay Center? Right. I mean, how do you get to hub spaces from here? I mean, I think you should look at all of it. I mean, you can walk downtown from here, but it's not always convenient. It's like walking in Orlando.
It's a good advertising.
I can count on you, Commissioner Mayor. Yes, please, I'm sorry.
So, I mean, there's no doubt that we need a deliverable like that, but I think it's important to also know that the public is really worn out on charrettes and studying. They just did a CRA plan. They just did you know, they have been so involved in so many plans that don't move. You talked about a 2008 CRA. We just finished a CRA. We've got so many, and this exact same area has been involved in all these different public input sessions, and then we say, oh, we're going to do another, and look at it a different way. So I think it's really important that the public, when engaged, is engaged in a new way, I don't know that in a more promised way, but they are fatigued over doing this and us doing that, and then them not seeing us move forward. So I think that that's really, you gotta be extremely mindful. And during that summer period, just also a consideration, which is what we saw last year with the CRA, we lose all the young people, if you will, that come here for college that very well may be staying here, a lot of those. So we have a really difficult time reaching our younger adults during that period as well.
That's a really great observation, and we figured as much that participation fatigue is probably fairly heavy at the moment. And that's why we want to look at, more unconventional ways to attract participation, because there's not a no participation plan. So we got to figure out how are we going to do this differently. We've done that, and really we don't have the answers yet. But one way, for example, is having a very targeted week of sessions where you have table exercises that people can rotate around, or just simple open houses where people have 8 hours a day they can stop in and stop at different stations. There's a variety of different ways where we can engage people and provide a lot more on their own time.
You'd be shocked at how many of those we've done.
I believe you.
We have hit all those different types of.
Again, there's no new silver bullet, but we hear you.
And just because of my last opportunity to say something, I do want to say, a few years ago now, it's probably been about 5, we were awarded the Brownsfield Convention, which is a big deal nationally, right? We couldn't do it. So I think we have to be coupling with some opportunity to do, we literally could not do it. And it was a big deal. It was a big deal for us here. We have a lot of Brownsfields. Just as a single example, right? I just spent last week at a massive convention in the West Coast, and I'm going everywhere but here. So as much as, we're not gonna get those giant conferences, obviously, but we should have been able to handle the Brownsfield, and we should be able to handle some of these, reasonable sized ones. So I don't wanna pit one idea against the other, but I don't wanna miss the opportunity that we are missing opportunities. And I know you said it's a loss to do conventions, I believe, but you bring those people in, they remember and they come back. This is they're not gonna be sad coming here, so it might be a loss right at this one location where we're doing it, but it's not a loss for our TDC or, the food industry and all that good stuff. So I don't want us to overlook that in a limited fashion. And that's what I've got to offer for this time.
Mr. Chairman, I just wonder if, in general, a study is a study. We've had multiple studies. Quite frankly, most studies have resulted in the displacement of the people from this geographical area, unfortunately. So there's a long history of people being included in studies, but not included in the development. So I think that when you have the deliverables, they must be attainable, achievable, and realistic. And maybe a bad word, but inclusive, because we have, this area is critical and it's very important. And so we should have not only the input of business owners, it should be residents and legacy people in there. And so that's my rebuttal to you.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you completely.
And I would ask Mr. Mayor, with the critical path, the timetable that we're going to create, would it coincide with what Mike's doing if we did all the deliverables at the same time?
Off the cuff, ahead of y'all's input and insight, the goal was to have them as concurrent as possible, right? Not to have Mike finish a study and then we start one. I think we all had urgency to get this done yesterday.
Mike, when is the deadline again, so everyone knows that for the CSL and ASM study?
Our target September, beginning of October.
This year.
This year.
Okay.
And I think there's ways that we can, that actually might work out great, because having some of the analysis complete on the target site can facilitate us completing our study in a timely fashion. Maybe not at the exact same moment, but we're going to need information from the ASM team in order to formulate our response to it. And so I think starting and working together before anyone's finished with any absolute outcomes. It's a perfect timing, even if the final deliverable is a month or so delayed, perhaps. So I say all that to say we can operate under any timeline. We just want to ensure that it works for both the county's needs and urgencies, the city's needs, and that it includes some level of community engagement that is inclusive and can be productive to the process. Because if it doesn't include that, then it will not.
And I just don't want it to get squeezed. I don't want it to get squeezed so much that then we lose the validity of the project from an engagement standpoint. And certainly, one of my favorite observations as mayor is we've done too much community engagement. So, that's a good problem to have, and I agree I mean, we have been doing a lot of it, but if we're setting a standard for that, then, and I agree with maybe coming up with some unconventional ways to do it, or different than we've been doing it before, just from a fatigue standpoint. I think that's a fair observation.
I agree with that, and hopefully we can get to a sweet spot. Okay, we've been going about an hour and a half. I didn't want this to go over 2 hours. Does anyone have any further questions for SGS? And what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the way ahead and then save grounds, if that's okay. Is everyone okay with that? Does anyone have any further questions for SGS? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation.
Appreciate it.
Okay, let's talk, we talked a little bit, well, the county and then Allison, I asked to put together a committee. Kind of like what he said, having the right people, and then it started to grow and grow and grow. And my experience is exactly what the previous presenter just said. You can get to a point where the shreds and all that help starts to fly, but the committee's got to get down and do the grit work and having the right people. I'd like to have some of the studies there before we did that, but does anyone else have an opinion on the way ahead on how we should go about that? I mean, this is a discussion item. I mean, I think y'all saw what Allison put together, and then it kind of grew a little bit. And, I guess it's an open forum. I'm not the driver on this. It's just a discussion item.
I'll start. I think we're premature. I mean, when their study come back, that study come back without input from us, and then we're gonna give it to citizens.
Right.
Kind of put input, I mean, you're gonna make it more confusing, in my opinion. I mean, I'd love, you just said in a couple months we have it, for us to mull over a little bit as elected officials before we get this committee. And I'm not completely sold on the committee anyway, personally, but I think it's way premature to select a committee, before we get these results.
So your opinion is to wait till the studies to formulate the committee?
For me.
Any comments from the city? Are we okay with that?
Agreed on administrative. So I agree on it.
I'm okay with that too. I just didn't want people to think that this is gonna be dead and nothing's gonna happen, because we had that discussion a couple months ago, put together, a plan, and it kind of went back and forth, and then it kind of grew, and so maybe after we get the study, we reconvened and look at what would be the right fit.
Since I did have an opinion about this, I would also just add that I agree. I think whether or not that committee is necessary is still an open question. At this point, we've got a lot of work that's being done. There's going to be a lot of stakeholder input through, or has been through the ASM process. It will be through the SLIP process. So I think seeing what comes back and then determining what the right next step forward is makes a lot of sense to me.
I guess this will be open discussion on any safe grounds, and there's a couple things I think. Well, I know that I want to share that concern me about the validity of getting this done. I don't know how much y'all stay up with what's going on in the state legislature, but the TDT dollars were a threat to basically be used for property tax offset. I don't know if they'll come back, but that'd be a big factor in moving this project forward. One of the sense of urgencies I have is, and it's actually one of the reasons why we did the turf before July 1st, is because we wanted to have that bonded out in case that went through. It obviously did in this legislative session. Multiple opinions on what you have with TDT dollars. But, I think that's a consideration we all need to have in the back of our minds, that the legislature could potentially hijack some of our TDT dollars, and that could affect the long-term effect of this plan if it doesn't get done by July 1st next year, or, at least move forward. So that's one of my concerns. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, we don't know, but that's one of the reasons I told Michael Capps, we need to look at this And I don't want to do anything that would rush something that would be a poor product. That's not what the goal is. But at the same time, I'd hate to miss an opportunity because the legislature completely changed how we get TDT dollars to the county. You know, so that's one of, that is a big concern for me. And then, the other thing is, I don't really have anything else. I'll wait till we make the public comment. I want everyone else to have an opportunity to have anything to say. You do, Councilwoman? Please.
Surprise, huh?
Well, we're here.
Two things. I mean, we know some of the stuff, we're saying the bones of this building are good, and so we know this is gonna have to be renovated. When you're talking about concerns over those dollars, that's obviously gonna be the first amount of money spent. The other stuff comes with and around it, so as long as this complements what can take place around it. So I think that we might have to look in staging for exactly the reason you're talking about. And so we know this one's coming, right? We know, I think there's a consensus that this building has to be fixed, right? Just as long as we're making sure it is complementary to the potentials of what we're gonna do around us. So I think that there are some stagings that could take place in this process. Just a concept there. Mayor?
Yeah, I think, look, I think that potential threat you've identified, which I agree with, I think only reinforces what I was saying earlier about if we can all agree on the idea that the Bay Center needs to be renovated, what can we be moving forward on just that? And look, I know it almost maybe comes across as hypocritical to say, let's focus on one building while I'm proposing that we look at a district, and those might seem that they're in conflict. They're not. In my mind, it's, do we have a leverageable asset so we are not solely reliant on what happens at TDT? It'd be nice to have an asset where if we had to go into the private market or try to leverage it, that we have something regardless of what that outcome is. And so, and I think Commissioner made a very fair point about, okay, well, let's not get lost in exactly what the dollars are, but I just would hate to sit on the landmine that we all agree on, waiting on other information and a second building and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't mean that I'm trying to suggest rushing a decision either. And Commissioner Strober totally agree. It needs to be something we're to be proud of. But and it's an open question. I mean, what can we do to inch forward? Kind of, if consensus is we got to do something with this building, is there anything we can do to inch that phase forward while we still look at convention center, ice, sports, and all of that? I don't know the answer to that. I just wonder.
Well, I think when we get the studies, we got to go to full court press. Because the timeline will get short pretty quick, and that, you know, and it's hard to do anything without at least looking at what the proposals are, but I totally agree with what everyone said. And I'm committed to doing something with this building. I believe our board is, and I just wanted to have that out for discussion so we don't miss an opportunity. Anyone else have anything to say?
Mr. I agree with, I mean, it's not gonna get any cheaper than it is today. I mean, tomorrow's going to be a little more expensive. And quite frankly, we have studied this since Commissioner Berry and I got elected. At some point, like she said, there's a fatigue of the citizens saying, how many more times are you going to study it before you do something? So I'm saying, for my vote, we should be moving forward.
Councilman Beard, did I see you wanted to
Yes,
say?
yeah, thank you. There are different opinions on how we should spend TDT dollars, but it was brought up, turf, which I think that came out of a bond. It's going to be a bond issuance, and that's going to limit how much we can spend on the Bay Center. I was just wondering to get on the table, what is the amount we have available in that bond issuance for the Bay Center at this point?
Well, there's a swag on that, because it depends on how much ASM puts in, the DIB, how much we refinance. Stephanie, you want to give a quick brief on that to the question?
Good morning, council members and board. So, basically the math, our maximum debt service that I had determined and working with our financial partners was $6 million total. So we have essentially a bank loan really for $25 million, which would leave $75 million to reach that $100 million max. The investments that the council, TDC, Tourist Development Council, invests in annually to grow our tourist development tax dollars that we ultimately receive by the county. So as those continue to grow, we can possibly borrow more. But that's really an annual basis, really. So, that we make those determinations. So there's always a possibility that it could be more than 100 million max. Maybe it's 105, for instance. So, but those are things that we would look at as we got a little closer to make those decisions.
So the max right now is 75 million, which would be remaining, just 25 million spent on TIF, right?
Only TDT though.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, there's other revenue that would come in that would support the project.
Can we ask Stefan one more question since he's here? Is, so the bond would be paid from the TDT, right?
That is correct.
What happens if that goes away?
So to the chairman's point, so typically what we see with state legislation, if we have something bonded, those are usually preemptive to any new legislation. So they do let the local governments make those decisions, and basically you're grandfathered in, if you will.
Okay, so it's just like a CRA, that if the CRA is bonded some money out there, you can't dissolve the CRA until you pay the money back.
That is correct.
Okay, that's what I was hoping. Thank you. Okay.
All right, any other? Okay, go ahead.
So in light of that whole discussion, I agree that moving more quickly on the Bay Center may very well make a lot of sense. But I also think that given the experience of the Smithview team, that we can get, enough, I think, intelligence and feedback over the next couple of months, from a macro planning standpoint to help inform, which of those options might make the most sense and just how that fits into the bigger picture of economic development in the area. So I would be hopeful that those discussions could take place relatively quickly and we could sort of jumpstart that. Obviously, feedback from the community is extremely important, but I know ASM has gotten a lot of feedback already from stakeholders that probably could be shared to help, accelerate the discussion. So that would be my hope, because I do think that what ends up happening at the Bay Center will end up being very important to what can be developed outside of it. So.
Mike, I think we're closer than we think, and I know the mayor is aware. I think there may be a contract or a LOI on the grant. There's a company for the tech park. I think there's the private sector, when they see the public sector moving, people are beginning to move. And I think that's what this is important, that we have to stimulate the private sector to start putting their dollars in first. And, if we continue to move forward with this, I think the private dollars are coming. I mean, I know that there are people looking at the tech park and the Grand Hotel over there. I think they're aware as well. I don't want to disclose it, but I think that's happening.
No, we don't do those. Anyways, I wanted to thank everyone here today. And so I think the deliverable we have right now is to get the ASM study back. Mike, I think in the back still, that obviously when that comes out, make sure that the mayor and all the city council, obviously that we get that. And then at that time, we should regroup, I think, in a timely fashion. And then I think that was where we start. I want to thank everyone, and the mayor and the city council team, the board here, and all the ancillary staff. Thanks for everything you had to say today. That was nice.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a recommendation on naming rights, if we could call it the Cola Reeves Bay Center.
Jim Reeves or his son? No. All right, we're adjourned.
Thanks, guys. Good.